I guess people will filter in. Um, I forgot. I also wanted to stream this on TikTok, but I need to charge my phone in order to do that. Bikini check. Whoa. Hello. Oh my god, people. The YouTube chatters. They're entering in. Simping is not easy, it's hard work. Bro, it's so hot. It's not looking good for summer in Texas. Ooh, I'm half naked because I like vibing. That's fine. Because my AC broke and I'm just struggling to get by. This is the only way that I can survive. Yeah, so you can absorb political views better. So you guys can really internalize my viewpoints on politics and law and philosophy. That's why we're here. The recent abortion stuff. Wow, such a serious question. Um, I think that Roe v. Wade, from a constitutional law perspective, is somewhat hard to define or hard to defend, just because the reasoning in the case relied heavily on sort of like spurious readings of history. Yeah, Poligini. So true. Do I remember doing Nasi salute with Bible? LMAO. A while back, I made like a video making fun of conservatives. And I was like pretending to be one and implying that they were all Nazis. But like only the part where I'm like pretending to be a Nazi gets clipped. Why do people on panels have such a hard time pronouncing Taftach? I think they have destiny brain. That's why they have such a hard time. They just struggle with pronouncing words. Whoa, hello from Spain? I love that. Well, what do you say to compliment me? So if you said something like really inappropriate, that would make sense why you got banned. Oh, you're the editor? Wild. What? South Africa? Country that is struggling. Don't get banned. I'll try not to. I could also I don't know. Put a bucket of water somewhere. I don't know if Twitch will ban me with like barely any viewers. Because everyone here is chill and cool. Do you think Blair White is such a pick-me because she wants to be a trad wife and wants a crew cut Marine Blue Lives Matter husband? I don't think Blair White is a pick-me. I think she genuinely believes what she says. I don't know. I think when you like accuse people of being pick-me's, it's like sort of frustrating because you're ignoring like the fact that they might have agency or thoughts that are unique and assuming that like the only reason they do anything is for external approval, usually from men. Yeah, exactly. It's Yahoo anime rules. If you guys like good stuff, you have to be cool. You have to be chill. I think that Ethan from H3 is also not a grifter. Yeah, I would not assume people are grifters by default. My usual Twitch content is politics, yeah. I'm glad you think I'm based on panels. Nasser Erudite also thinks I'm based on panels, which is very flattering because she's very smart. And a lot of times when I'm on panels, I feel like, holy shit, I am not making my points well. Or like, I'm like stumbling for words, like I'm misphrasing. It's totally different from like an environment where you're like writing things out and you can like edit as you're going. I'm glad you liked my chat with Destiny. Destiny's really fun to talk to, but, yeah. I sometimes feel like quite intimidated by him. And so I feel like I like get quiet. I'm also sort of scared of Destiny's community. Just a little bit. Well, and not like, I think I can deal with a high degree of harassment, but I do feel like I want Destiny's community to like me. I like Destiny a lot. I think though, I don't know, Destiny's marketing and branding is like very progressive, but a lot of times if you push him on his positions, it turns out that he has like quite moderate views on I think most things. Are transgender people allowed to stream in bathing suits? Yeah, because I'm a man, technically. So men are allowed to be shirtless. I'm more covered than the average man who would be shirtless. So how I do research. I go to Google Scholar and then I type in the topic. This is something that I've wanted to talk about for a while, because like, you guys don't understand, but like, the background for a lot of Twitch panels is you don't actually know the topic until sometimes like 24 hours beforehand. And so like, people will ask me like, do you want to be on a panel? And I'll say yes, and then they'll give me the topics, and they might be topics that I've never thought about before, and like, very likely they're topics that I don't have a super strong opinion on yet, and so I have to do research, and I'll do the research, and like, there's a lot of pressure to take a stance that's like interesting and like a little bit spicy. And so I feel like a lot of times the pressure from like, in order to get re-invited to panels, you have to be able to like entertain. And part of entertaining is being able to take contrary and interesting opinions and defend them in a way that's like very vigorous. So I think that like on panels, a lot of times my viewpoints are like a little bit exaggerated, in proportion to like how much I'm like invested in them actually. But yeah, to research, I just go on Google Scholar and I'll like read what people are saying, and I'll try to come to a conclusion based off of that. I think the pendulum is definitely swinging, right? I think that progressivism is sort of like, specifically like woke progressivism, or this like identity politics, sort of social justice philosophy is sort of, it's reached critical mass. And I think people are realizing that it just doesn't make any sense. How do you read so many papers in 24 hours? Usually papers aren't too long. Like for the Roe v. Wade debates, I actually read like the full Alito briefing, which is like 98 pages. So most of the pages are like half citations. But yeah, I think that we'll see a pendulum shift to the right. I also think that geopolitically, both China and Russia, major US geopolitical enemies, are going to. I think China's facing serious problems demographically, economically, and in regards to like geopolitical tensions in Taiwan. I'm quite skeptical of China's ability to actually control and occupy Taiwan. And so I think that China's influence globally is sort of going to wane. And I think it's going to be a little bit similar to the massive growth that Japan experienced, and then the big slowdown that Japan experienced, the recessions. I think that we'll probably see something like that happen with China. And with Russia's failures in Ukraine, even if they do end up taking and occupying chunks of eastern Ukraine, it's going to come at a major cost. And I think that Americans will regain a lot of national confidence seeing geopolitical rivals struggle in these arenas. And as Americans regain confidence, I think we'll see like a real moderating influence on the politics. And effectively, I think that'll move us to like a more center-right sort of politics. We're heading towards a world war. Maybe. I don't know. I think that like the totalizing wars of the 20th century are extremely historically unique. So I think that if we see a world war, I mean, even if we see like China and the United States go to war, it's sort of like it could end up very, very badly, with like nuclear weapons flying. Or, and I think the more realistic scenario is that it doesn't end up badly, and that, you know, nuclear weapons are sort of like, they're like chemical gases, in the world wars, where they're not employed. And so I think that you might see something like that. And the way that that would probably happen is the wars are again fought with like a pretense of not really being wars, because once they become like proper hot wars, that's when things like sort of spiral out of control. So I think the extent to which you'll see like conflict between the US and China is probably not going to escalate that far. Russia is threatening Finland, and Finland looks poised to join NATO. I don't think the US will. I think the US is going to move right. I think the US has moved left for a long time. And I think that we're going to retreat backward or retreat right a little bit. Whether or not that's like a permanent fixture, probably not, but what war wasn't historically made? It depends on what metrics you're operating on. So like lots of wars are unique in different ways. The reason why world wars in the 20th century were so unique is because they were totalizing. So if you look at something like the 30 Years' War, or you look at these like conflicts in Europe, a lot of times you'll have the war happening, and really what it is this like economic attrition battle where you just want to like constantly be skirmishing and causing your enemies to spend money until there's collapse in their country. And then what happens in World War I and World War II is war becomes like all-encompassing, and people are, the wartime economy, the economy of the nation is like entirely devoted towards this goal. I do think that Putin has a way out that saves face, and it's taking the eastern regions, Donbass and whatnot, and then retreating and saying that was the goal the whole time. This is an OT question about transitioning. Do the hormones or medication you take make your male genitals sterile? I'm not sure. I think they do sometimes, but I want to see. Okay. I'm not actually sure if I have like viable sperm. I think it's possible. How do I feel about abortion personally? I think you have to separate like how I feel about Roe v. Wade versus abortion specifically. And I'm not religious. So I don't personally believe in like soul at conception and therefore, violation of something inherently sacred. Have you seen the Brittany Simon drama? I find people's reactions to her level system interesting. I don't know, it seems sort of overblown. I don't really get the fascination with Brittany Simon. She seems like a very, I just don't know her that well. So, in your opinion, Donbass region belongs to Russia? I don't know where you got that. Obviously it belongs to Ukraine right now. I think that in the future, Russia may take it and occupy it long term and establish like governments in there that are very friendly to Russia. if we go more right, do you think adult trans people will have rights threatened? Maybe. Um, I think what you'll see is like being transgender will cease to be a social movement and will begin to be seen more like OCD or other like mental issues. And so like OCD isn't highly politicized. If people have an obsessive compulsive disorder, they go to psychologists and psychiatrists and doctors and they find out treatment plans that work for them, but they mostly deal with that internally. And yeah, something like 1.2% of the population has OCD, which is far more than trans people. And yet you don't see OCD pride flags, you don't see an OCD month, you don't see companies that are like talking about OCD visibility. And this is, despite the fact that obsessive compulsive disorder is much more common than gender identity disorder, and the fact that obsessive compulsive disorder, oftentimes is like very debilitating, just like gender identity disorder is. And so I think that you'll probably see gender identity disorder become more like other mental issues in which it's less political. I think because of our politics being so fractured and America not really having like a clear guiding path forward or ideology that Americans feel confident in, we end up having these little battles culturally about things that really don't matter. I don't think it really matters what trans people are doing as long as it's not being exported or pushed onto the entire culture. And right now, I do think that trans people and LGBT groups really try to push being transgender as something that needs to be represented in all sorts of, domains of social life. And I think that's where you get a lot of pushback. If you didn't have those pushes, I don't think you'd see the same pushback. Yeah, and so trans people in sports is like a good example of this because people aren't actually angry at trans people just transitioning or presenting female or whatever. They're angry because trans people are demanding that other people see them the way that they see themselves, right? And what you're really doing is like a kind of, it's like a thought control, right? Where you're saying like, you must see me this way and therefore allow me to like compete in the way that I feel is appropriate, regardless of your philosophical leanings. And I think that like that feels very invasive to some people. My viewpoint is that like if you philosophically do not believe that trans women are women, I don't see why, or like your group of people, your sports league believes this. I don't see why you should be forced to not believe this and therefore be forced to include trans women. I think my favorite male body type is like, it's like the dad bod, where it's like muscular, but also not like lean muscular, like bulky muscular. I think chubby guys are sort of cute. There's only one male body type, and you guys will hate me for this, but I'm not like the biggest fan of. And that's like very lanky, like skinny guys. You don't need to believe that to not want trans women in sport. There's plenty of other reasons. Yeah, so like the trans women in sport argument, a lot of times it pretends to be an argument about competency or ability level. So people will say things like trans women have an unfair advantage. But I think that if we found some group of men, say like men who had their toes cut off, and we found out that men who had their toes cut off consistently underperformed what female athletes performed. So they could compete with women and it would be perfectly fair. Even if that were true, I don't think people would be saying you need to include men who have their toes cut off in women's divisions of sports, even though it's totally fair. I think that like the question really is about whether or not trans women are women. And if they really are women, then their natural advantages are like natural advantages that women might acquire through anything else, just through randomly being taller or whatever. And if whether or not trans women are women is a legitimate philosophical debate, if that's something that you can have a diversity of opinions on and not necessarily be objectively correct or incorrect, then I think it makes sense to not mandate that trans women are in women's sports. But I think that if women's leagues want to include trans women, I don't see a problem with that. I think it's their choice to do that or not do that. I'm still not understanding your position on this topic. Do you think trans people in sports is right or not? So what I know about advantages, like biologically, is that it does seem like there's advantages that trans women have in sports, at least up to like 3 or 4 years after transition. So at the very least, the current rules regarding like 12 months on hormones are not good enough. They should probably be longer. But I don't think that trans women have any special right to compete with cis women in sports. So really what I think it should be is like up to like the sports leagues and the people who watch them and the athletes themselves. And if these groups together agree that trans women in sport is okay, I don't think that's wrong necessarily. Because I do think it's like fundamentally a question about philosophy and not actually natural advantage. The advantages don't go away. It depends on what advantages you're talking about. So like muscle and like bone density and some of these advantages have like different rates of disappearing. FFS would be really cool. I would definitely consider it. I have so many questions to ask. You interest me to no end. But the first question I have to ask, what's up with the mouth thing you do and how long have you been doing it? Dude, I don't know, just a tip. Height, reaction time, body size, bone structure, ligaments, yeah. I did see Everything Everywhere All at Once. It was really good. I watched Everything Everywhere All at Once with no prior context, just jumping into it, which was quite the experience. mean, I don't even know if conservative is the right label for me. Being trans in Texas is based. I don't know, it's fine. I think a lot of people have this like conception of more conservative states like they're just hellish if you are a minority. And I don't think it's true. Most people are completely nice. I usually just consider myself moderately right wing. Yeah, center right. What do I think of universal basic income? I think it's an interesting idea. The other way you could do it is just by... Hold on. Is just by having negative income tax, which is, I think, maybe a easier way of getting the same results. Bro. Flathead screwdrivers? Hell yes. But yeah, I think that yeah, that's my fallout. Whoa, did I just scratch myself? Oh. Germans are fine. Good people. I don't know. I can't believe I scratched myself. What the hell? Tragic. Stream. I could do a bath stream. It would be pog. No, I'm a terrible cook. I hope that ends any housewife fantasies people have. My biggest realistic fear, probably just poverty or being homeless. I always, because I grew up very poor, and so like the fear of returning to that is just so scary. I realized I was trans when I was 14. And afford to transition. I mean, it wasn't too expensive to transition, but it was in a very weird position financially growing up, because my father and mother like separated, and I wasn't able to see my father for like years and years until I was older, until I was like 14, 15. And so like I was on my father's health insurance, and that was really helpful for transitioning when I was younger. But like I never saw him, and my dad had like a good job, but like obviously because I didn't see him, didn't live with him, I didn't really like benefit from that outside of things like health insurance. How can you, why do you say that? What do you mean I look upper middle class? Like based on what? Because I'm white and blonde? But yeah, my parents were pretty accepting. Oh, a very New England accent, very waspy. Interesting. Because I did not grow up in the Northeast. This person is spamming, asking if I consider myself black, which is a meme that I don't understand. I don't understand it. The Northeast just sounds cold. I want to live there. Yeah, guys, I'm black, very clearly. I'll be like Brittany. I'll be like, I'm Middle Eastern. I just insist on that. I'm a person of color. No, I was raised pretty liberal. Yeah. Okay. I am going to end the stream for now. I will return later. I love you all. You guys are incredible. And we'll hang out again in the future.